A cold snap had frozen everything. Record-low temperatures, setting in the previous week, presaged an early winter. The man wheeled his bicycle from the ferry dock over the rocks and down to the shoreline, where the ice had cracked and erupted in little chips, reflecting a bleak sky. The cold's relentless grip on this chill November day was enough to send most men reeling back to their homes as quickly as possible, but this man hardly felt a thing. He stared at the surrounding shore and the ice encroaching the edges of the battered point. A spumy spray broke at the dock where the ferryboat had just left its mooring in a whirl of ice and black water. A light snow swirled about, landing on the man's coat and brushing his reddened cheeks. He turned his head to the big boat pulling away from the dock. There were 7 cars on board for the return voyage, so few it hardly seemed worth the haul. Most of the passengers were huddled in their vehicles, but a handful emerged to stand on deck, braving the elements. If they turned and saw him standing there, would they sense his desperation? Would they glean any hint of who he was or what he was about to do, wondering perhaps if he could go through with it? A dull sun was setting through the gray skies arching overhead. Soon there would be nothing between him and the chill. He looked up at the mountain looming over the Adolphustown Reach. Somewhere up there, in 3 hours' time, he had a different assignation. One he knew he was not meant to keep. Just one more broken promise in the grand scheme. He turned to look over his shoulder. Through the trees, he could make out the house he had once called home. It could never feel like home to him again, not after what had happened. Yesterday lay like a crack in time, dividing his old life from whatever remained of it. Everything that mattered had been left behind in that house. He thought of his wife and felt a cold, clear burning inside. She had beaten him. She had stared across the courtroom with coldness and malevolence and spoken the words that brought his doom, describing to them how he had struck her. So she had won, and the victor's spoils were too great for him to bear. But what about his sons? They still needed a father. He'd hardly been that to them. He took a step onto the ice, feeling its slippery solidity beneath his shoe. For a moment, it took him back to the skating parties when he was a kid. The endless fun, the shrieks of laughter and cups of hot chocolate afterwards. And the daring going out farther than he should have. He'd been lighter then, a mere pup. Now he weighed more than 200 pounds. He looked up and imagined himself skating out to where the black swath of water stretched 50 yards offshore, chunks of disembodied whiteness bobbing as the ferry cut a path on its journey to the far side. He took another step and paused at the uneasy creaking. In a sense, his mind had been made up long ago. He simply had to follow through with his intentions. He would head out for as long as the ice would bear his weight. Then there would be the first cracking, then another, and it would be done. He thought about the cold engulfing him, the iciness gripping his skin. Even if he struggled, it would be too late. If someone were to come looking for him years from now, what would they find? A pile of bones, at best. It would tell nothing of why he had done it. Images spewed from his mind. All the anger, all the labor, all the loss. How would they see him afterwards? As a coward who ran away from his problems? Maybe he was. Then wasn't it better to get it over with once and for all? He could still make her pay, he thought. He'd kept meticulous records. Maybe one day it would help them understand his dark motives, the rage that burned, the anger she'd spoken of in court. The diary would help them piece it all together.